Namaste to one and all present here. Wishing everyone a happy Pongal and Makar Sankranti. I am Kirtana, a student of IIT Madras. On behalf of the Vande Mataram family, I would like to welcome our chief guest of the day, Rashmi Samant ji, to this campus. I would also like to extend a hearty welcome to the faculty members, students and other audience to the first Vande Mataram event for the academic year 2023-24. I request our chief guest to assume her place on the stage. Today, being the birth anniversary of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, the Vande Mataram team would like to pay our tributes to this honorable freedom fighter and soldier. This day is also known as Parakram Divas. Today is also the day Vande Mataram started its journey 8 years ago, on 23rd January 2015. Vande Mataram, our national song, embodies the historical culture and legacy of our nation. Our national song has inherent nature which facilitates every Bharatiya to visualize and bow down in reverence to the divine maternal imagery, Bharat Mata, and inspires everyone to perform their national duty. We have proudly followed the tradition of singing our national song, Vande Mataram, at the beginning of every lecture. Therefore, I invite everyone to rise and join Ishanji to sing our national song.
Hello. Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram, Sujalam Sufalam, Malayaj Sheetalam, Sasya Shamalam Mataram, Vande Mataram, Subrajotsna Ulakitayamini, Ullakasumita Drumadhara Shobhini, Suhasini, Sumadhura Bhashini, Sukhadam Varadam Mataram, Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram.
Thank you, Ishanji. The Vande Mataram Forum at IIT Madras aspires to take initiatives that introduce and sensitize the student community about Bharat's rich cultural, economic, socio-political, scientific and technological heritage, its ramifications today and the thoughts about the roadmap ahead. The shloka from Ramayana, Janani Janma Bhumishya Swargadabhigariyasi, which means that the mother and motherland are superior to heaven, is the philosophy that has kept us going ahead for the last 8 years in this institute and strengthened our national conscience. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome our chief guest of the day, Rashmi Samant ji, at this event. I request Professor Ranjit Kumar Nanda to welcome our guest by presenting them with a fruit basket. Thank you, sir. Rashmi Samant is an Oxford University graduate and former president-elect of the Oxford University Student Union, the first Indian woman to hold this post. She had to face a lot of difficulties, including cyberbullying and racist attacks towards her family and herself, from which she emerged stronger and more determined. She says, "The pressure creates diamonds and fire refines gold. Remember that through each trial and tribulation life throws at you." She is a graduate from Manipal Institute of Technology and later did her master's from Oxford University in Energy Systems. She is a sustainable energy enthusiast who believes in effective policymaking and energy equality for healing the deteriorating climate of the world. Through her organization, Atmah Foundation, she is an active voice for the rights of the Hindu community in India and abroad and is a strong leader in making. For her, the country's pride is paramount, and her indomitable spirit has demonstrated the capability of Indian youth to the world. Now I request our speaker to deliver their much-awaited talk on identity crisis and national resurgence. The talk will be followed by a brief question-answer session. Please reserve your questions for the same.
So, good evening, IIT Madras. Good evening. Can I have a louder good evening? Okay, that's much better. So, how are we doing today? Okay, I just hear a few voices here. So, some more voices from the back. How are we doing today? Okay, good to hear. So firstly, thank you so much for having me, and I'd like to thank Team Vande Mataram for having me here on this day to address this gathering. And without maybe further ado, we can start with the topic. I made a PPT so that if you get bored of a face speaking here, you can then maybe try reading the slides and then, alternate between the two if it gets too boring. Identity crisis and national resurgence as a case study of Hinduphobia and anti-Hindu hate. So this is what we are going to talk today about. So we'll start with a little bit of history. So what is this Hindu identity? Historically speaking, it has been a mark of pride. It's denoted everything exceptional, and this name has been used time and again to reinforce a sense of credibility. Companies in India have been named Hindustan Motor, Hindustan Steel, there has been the Hindu newspaper, there has been the Hindustan machine tools. So it's been used to reinforce a sense of credibility and as a mark of brand endorsement at one point. Multinational corporations have also used the word Hindustan in their names to reinforce that sense of credibility when they came to India. When Ciba Geigy came to India, they went with the name Hindustan Ciba Geigy. When Richardson came to India, they went with the name Richardson Hindustan. When Unilever Limited, a British company, came to India, they went with the name Hindustan Unilever Limited. So that has been the sort of association of the word Hindu with respect to Hindustan. It has been a mark of something exceptional. It has had brand value. It has had this sense of something that was credible. Everything exceptional was associated with this. Like I just said, Will Durant in his book, The Case for India, says, Tata the Hindu built the biggest steel plant in the world. That's what he said in his book. And he knew that Tatas were Zoroastrians, they were Parsis. But at this point, the word Hindu had become more of an adjective to, denote something exceptional, to denote something that's great, that is, a sense of grandeur. It had translated to that. So that's why in his book, when he speaks of the Tatas, he says, Tata the Hindu built the world's largest steel plant. So when it comes to, words, there are some words within our languages, both Hindi, Sanskrit, all languages, even English. There are some words which have expanded, and then there are some words which have shrunk, diminished. Tail today means oil, okay, any oil. But tail originally in our dictionary, within our grammatical this thing, is supposed to mean til ka tel. So only sesame oil was supposed to be called tail. But it expanded so much in its meaning that today all kinds of oil are called tail in Hindi. When it comes to mrig, what does mrig mean? Can I have a few answers? We all know. What does a mrig mean? You have many mrigs on your campus. I saw one on my way in. It means a deer. But mrig originally meant a wild animal. because Mrigeshwar means lion. So Mrigeshwar does not mean king of deer. It means king of the jungle, king of all animals. That's why a lion is called Mrigeshwar. But today Mrig has shrunk to the identity of that of a deer. So there are, two different kinds of words. Are you guys with me here? So I hope you're following what I'm trying to say. There are words which have expanded in their meaning. They kind of try to then denote everything in their vicinity. And then there are words which have shrunk, which used to denote something much bigger, but today they denote something very small, a reduced sense of identity, the loss of magnanimity. So there are two different kinds of words. How does magnanimity come to be? How does a word like tail go from tilka tail to tail? A word we have seen, earns that sense of magnanimity from its list of achievements and historical legacy. Now, I can't, name everything for tail and brick, but I can do something by giving a more contemporary example. IITs. Due to the achievements of IITs, it symbolizes quality education in India today. I think we can agree on that. Though I didn't go to an IIT, I think I'll give you guys that credit. It's transcended to that because of the quality of students who come in, the students, because of the achievements of the students who go out. So that there is that sort of, sense of achievement which then builds on to it. So the word Hindu actually gained its significance, its magnanimity as an adjective from three different sort of set of achievements. A social, a word which is used in societal constructs, it gains its magnanimity from three things. Number one, the word Hindu gained its sort of adjective status because it was a successful civilization that contributed to 33% of GDP through India, through Hindus in Bharat, and through 49% of the world's GDP through Hindus across the world. This is ancient India I'm talking. And in ancient India, Hindus were displaced. They were operating from outside India as well. It gained the quintessential epithet of Sone ki Chidiya, economic progress. This was point one. This was one achievement that kind of pushed it. The second one was military progress. We've had exceptional bravery, we've had exceptional kingdoms with great military, and not just that, during colonization, during the Mughal invasion as well, we've had great heroes and heroines, right, starting all the way from Chalukyas to Satavahanas, invasion to Bappa Raval, Rana Kumbha, Krishna Dev Raya, Ram Dev Raya, Maharana Pratap, Chhatrapati Shivaji, Guru Gobind Singh, even women like Rani Lakshmi Bai and Rani Durgavati. So we've had these characters who have time and again not just built a great civilization but also stood up for its sort of perseverance by showing military progress. So that also added to the word Hindu becoming an adjective. Because the words are only a function of the achievements surrounding and the people who ascribe to it. The last one was educational progress. I think I'm just repeating because all of us know Aryabhatta gave the world 0, Charaka gave Ayurveda, Shushruta was the father of surgery. There was Nalanda, Takshashila, Odantapuri, Vikramshila, Vallabhi, Telhara, Jagaddala, Odantapuri, and Pushpagiri, which were all exceptional universities of the ancient world. So these three things, in their sense, contributed to that formation of an adjective of the word Hindu. Now let's sort of look into how a sense of identity relates to a sense of nation, because it's not disjoined. A nation is not just a territory, but it is an emotional entity which has a base in a territorial sort of a setup. If I'm to start explaining it word by word, then first it is that a nation indicates a group of people or a community which are traditionally living in a land but have a culture which is distinct to that of other people around the world. The cultural distinctiveness might come from race, religion, language, or a combination of these things. And that being said, it is not essential that all the people who identify with a particular nation be the same. But they have a point which creates harmony. There is some fundamental similarity between the people that brings them together. There is a fundamental similarity in the sense that they relate to one another, which then creates a sense of pride and mentality of motivation to maintain a separate identity from the rest of the world. A country or a land by itself can never be a nation. It can only be a territorial unit, as long as there is no emotional unit attached to it. Sri Aurobindo famously said, "A nation is indeed the outward expression of a community of sentiments, whether it be the sentiment of a common blood, or the sentiment of a common religion, or the sentiment of a common interest, or any or all of these sentiments combined." Hindus are a nation as much as Germans are, Jews are. The Jews for over 2,000 years were displaced from their traditional home. They were persecuted. They were, all sorts of gross human rights violations happened to them. But 2,000 years later, they re-established their country, their nation in their traditional homeland. The Tibetans around the world today, they might not be living in Tibet, they might not have Tibet, but the Tibetans around the world today are a living example of the Tibetan nation. The Hindus too have remained a nation, no matter who managed to rule them over during the last millennium. The quintessence sort of sentiment of a nation has remained intact. Its substance and its element have remained intact. Now, okay, everybody's like, okay, nationalism is a bad word. Let's not talk about it. Okay, stereotypes. Identity and sense of nation, when it projects onto people, then people develop a sense of nationalism. It is a combination of both identity and the sense of nation that comes out of it. But then, okay, we've all heard, okay, nationalism is a bad word, so on and so forth. The post-World War II and Nazi appropriation is where this kind of stereotype came from. That nationalism was bad. But Indian nationalism was all about getting freedom. It was all about, fighting resistance. You can't equate the two, because one was a fight for global supremacy and the other is a fight to retain original identity. It is just the sort of struggle to survive and be in your, in your natural sort of sense without being appropriated by others. There is a distinct difference, and only the sort of appropriated meaning of that kind of nationalism is bad. Nationalism isn't inherently bad. So maybe you can give people this lesson when they try to point to you that, okay, it's a bad word. Defining Indian nationalism. If you were to define that from this perspective, then it's nothing more than self-respect, pride in own heritage, in dharma, in resistance to foreign invasion and appropriation, to colonialism, to exploitation and human rights violations of the indigenous people. It's plain that. It is resistance to something that's wrong. Nation that is to be conquered. So we all know our history. We all know that we were conquered, and the sort of Takshashilas of the day are a story of the past. And for more than a millennium, they haven't existed. So what happened? When Islamic and Christian intellectuals from the Middle East and Europe respectively tried to discern the challenge of this prosperous landmass to their conquerors, they were overwhelmed and daunted by the huge sort of landmass and prosperity that this united Hindu identity showed. Because you can see that there is no nation as huge as India ever in history. The US on an average has the GDP of 28%, but ancient India was 33% and more maybe. So even the current day United States is not able to match what ancient India was. And the landmass and the people north to south, east to west. There are different kingdoms, but somehow everybody is united. They have one identity. How is this possible? How do you break them? How do you break them from outside? They were daunted by this question. And it posed a huge problem to the expansionist conquerors who wanted to go there no matter what. Because again, sone ki chidiya. It was mostly akin to the sort of prosperous countries that these conquerors have historically diminished, be it the South American civilization, be it the African civilization, or the native European civilization. The landmass that they now wanted to conquer was not just prosperous, but had an evolved language, literature, philosophy, art, architecture, dance, drama, cuisine, fusion, fashion, culture, civilization, and warfare, which was rooted in some kind of principle and value. They didn't want to do the right thing, wrong thing, even when they were fighting wars. It seemed almost infallible. They had a heightened sense of self-respect, self-confidence, identity, loyalty, and unity. How do you break this unit? It was a problem. They tried by force. Hali has written a very beautiful poem about Islamic invasion of India. He says, they tried by force. वो दीन हिजाजी का बेबाक बेड़ा निशा जिसका अक्सा ए आलम में पहुंचा, मुजाहिम हुआ कोई खतरा ना जिसका, ना में फटका कुल झुड में झिझका, किए बेसफर जिसने सातों समंदर, वो डूबा दहाने में गंगा के आकर. So basically what he says, Hali, so one of the Islamic poets, an intellectual, what he says is the fearless fleet of Deen-e-Hijazi, of a conqueror, whose mark has reached all the way till Aqsa-e-Alam, which is, flung far and wide. He was able to conquer it all. He had no fear in him, no hesitation, and the one who also crossed the 7 seas. But he drowned in the face of the Ganges because force was not enough to break the Indian identity, the Hindu identity, which was now a national identity in the ancient world, that this force was not enough. So this poem beautifully says, I think the translation is a little because I used Google Translate, but that's a poem by Hali, and you guys can look it up maybe later to see how beautifully they have admitted that force was not enough. We came with all our force, we sent our best conquerors, but they drowned in the face of Ganga. That's when they resorted to an intellectual attack. This is from Mahabharata. I think this political strategy is very old. I think political strategies, as much as they go, they are common to the world. I think politics does not change much. It's the characters who change when you change countries, regions, and stuff. Some might have more values than others, but the strategies remain the same. In Mahabharata, they say that एक with बाण बड़े-बड़े साम्राज्यों को नष्ट कर सकता है. That mighty kingdoms can be destroyed by a crooked intellectual. That's the way to go, because if not by force, then let's use our intellect, because I think it's true when they say the pen is mightier than the sword. It is actually, and our history is testament to that fact. Breaking a nation, breaking its identity. Let's look at a Persian dictionary for this. So Persian, the official language of Iran, which was one of the great Islamic countries. So they have this, there's a respected and popular Persian dictionary by Hashan Ahmed called Farang-e-Ahmed that defines a Hindu very beautifully. They're very, they're so taken by the word. They describe it as resident of Hindu Desh, Dharma of Hindustan, unique Dharma. This is what one of the oldest translations of Hindu comes up to be. Some of the examples are a black mole on a mistress's cheek, popularly known as a beauty spot. It is as beautiful as a beauty spot. Or one who steals the hearts of girls, so basically a heartthrob. So they equate the word Hindu with these phrases to make it look as the most beautiful adjective out there. I mean, if anybody read this, they would think of the word Hindu as a beautiful adjective. And And this is the fact. You can look up this dictionary, and this is what it's written, and this is how original, the sort of pre-invasion Islamic scholars viewed Hindu as. Beautifully. There's also a Persian Arabic English by John Richardson in 1806, published in London, and he draws from the sort of inferences of ancient Persian scholars, and he also comes up with similar conclusion. Hind, India, a woman's name. So many Persian, kings have named their daughters, there's a Hind at the end of it, because it's so beautiful. They want it associated with their name. Hindustan, Indian Hindu, and Indian, a sword of excellent edge made of Indian steel. Again, an adjective. Anything belonging to India, Hindi, Hindu word has always been used in a very respected sense as an adjective. In the light of above facts, you can now see what happened. So this is a 19th century Persian dictionary, Lugat, which was published in India. This is sort of post-invasion India, where they're still trying to hold all of India together, conquer more lands, and loot more by the day. In this dictionary, a Hindu is defined as black, thief, and kafir. And you can see where the two words came from. The original Persian dictionary actually describes Hindu as a black mole on a mistress's cheek, but the malicious intentions made them just pick up, like I think there are lots of these memes around about how there is a loss of context just to paint somebody as a villain. So, this is malicious intent. You can clearly see how only black has been picked out from a beautiful phrase describing Hinduism. How from one who steals the hearts of the girls, they pick up the word chor, thief. And kafir, yes, non-believers. That's always been given. So this is what Lugat, the 19th century Persian dictionary says. So this is how distortion has happened over time. And this is not just one. There are many examples, but I think this was the most convenient to kind of put on a slide in a concise way. It was not just the Islamic scholars. It was also Christian scholars disguised as missionaries. Bishop Caldwell, I think there are lots of trusts under his name around India today, from 1814 to 1891. He created India's first divisive linguistic identity. The Hindu nation has never been divided on its languages. I said that it could be languages, but it can also be a harmony of other things. The Hindu identity was always kept together by a harmony of fundamental similarity, and not by differences like language or anything else which other civilizations have depended upon. Hindus have moved across borders, irrespective of who's ruling where. Adi Shankaracharya went all the way from Kerala to Kashmir, from Gujarat to, Dwarka in Gujarat to, to Puri in Odisha. And he went all the way from Sringeri where where there's a Shankaracharya Peeth today, to all the way in the north, and also from all the way till Kashi. So nothing stopped him. Though we've had different kingdoms, different kinds of kingdoms, we've also had republics, democratic republics called, we've had it in Bihar, and we've had it in Punjab for some times, and they were called Paraganas or something around that lines at some point. So we have different kinds of things. We've had monarchies in some places, we've had different kinds of kingdoms, but people have always moved freely through this land, from north to south, from east to west, on their Char Dham Yatras, to attend a Kumbh Mela, because there was one identity that kept them together. But for the very first time, this unity and diversity was preyed upon, and a separate linguistic identity was created. If you want to look at, inclusivity, I can give you an example from Dharmasthala. Dharmasthala is a temple in my own hometown. It's close to Udupi. I come from Udupi. I'm a Kannadiga. So we have a temple called Dharmasthala. It's the temple of Manjunatheshwar. So the god is Manjunatha, Shiva. So he's the god. The priest there is a Vaishnavite who believes that Vishnu is the ultimate. But the Dharmadarshi of the temple is a Jain. So you see this kind of inclusivity but unity unity despite the diversity. So that has been Indian diversity. It has never been a divisive kind of a testament. It has never divided us over lines, but more of brought us together over lines, because we found unity and sense of identity in something larger than that. And by larger than that, I mean things like paropakara, seva, altruism. Krishna temple has given food since 11th century, every day non-stop, free food for all, every afternoon. And it changes with the seasons. And the cuisine is so famous that you can find a Udupi temple in every corner of the world. But that free food was the origin of that cuisine. So this sense of paropakara, of seva, was what kept us together. It was not because we spoke the same language, or, we wore the same clothes, or, we had some kind of, we didn't have to look for outward sense of similarity, because we had that inward sense of identity and inward sense of similarity. Even if you went all the way to Kerala or Kashmir, everybody from within felt the same, because we had the same values. If somebody, a bhuka turns up at our door, we would never turn them away. We would give them food. That sense carried on from south to north to east to west, and that was the sense of identity that was attacked upon by using external reference of differences, which we didn't look for until a while ago. Grand effects of distortion. For a very long time, we've been very sort of immune to these distortions. I think even today there are few people who are immune, but not as immune as many other people are. But there's always been this like sort of differing thing. Many people bought it in. In fact, in 1875, in a Pune lecture, Swami Dayanand Saraswati said, "Ye naam," by "ye naam" he means Hindu, "हमें मुसलमानों ने दिया है, तथा इसका अर्थ है काला काफिर चोर होता है, हमें इसे त्यागना चाहिए." He said that this name was given to us by Muslims, and it means black, kafir, and thief, and we need to tyagna chahiye, we need to let go of this name. But it does not mean that. It was just some kind of a distortion. But we bought it. Even some of our great, leaders bought it. But he immediately course-corrected. He was a very, 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 scholarly person. He didn't stick to it. This was 1875. In 1877, there's this, very famous recorded interview between H. Perkins and Swami Dayanandji, where he clearly says, when H. Perkins asks him, why is the Hindu dharma weak like a cotton thread, he replies to him that it's not as weak as a cotton thread. It is as strong as a steel. It's as strong as steel. Steel might break, but the Hindu dharma won't. H. Perkins asks, give me an example. It's just very fancy words. Give me an example. He goes on to say Hindu dharma is like an ocean. The way countless waves arise in the ocean, in the same way, you can see this dharma. There is one sect of people who drink water after filter. There is another sect who only drinks milk. There is one sect who are lifelong sadhus, ascetics. There is one sect who only worship the formless divine, another sect who worship avatar. There is one sect who practice philosophy, one more who just choose to meditate instead of believing in any philosophical way. But with all these differences, we are all Hindu. It's very interesting because they say that maybe you can indoctrinate yourself, you can go and become a Hindu anywhere, but nobody has the right to kick you out of Hindu dharma. This is one thing about Hinduism, that you can do whatever you do, but nobody has the right to kick you out of Hindu dharma unless and until you decide it for yourself. So that is the beauty and the inclusivity and the tolerance that this identity professes. And also it is interesting that in Hindu scholarship, since a very long time, it is said that a scholar is liable to have changing thoughts on a particular subject, that as you evolve, you might change your opinion on a certain thing, on a certain topic. The last sort of stance that the scholar takes before he dies is the one that needs to be accepted. So if you look at Swami Dayanandji, this is the stance that needs to be accepted, because this is one of the last kind of stance that he takes. But the one misinterpretation and the one sort of misstep that he took a while ago is the one which has stayed around. That is unfortunate. recent efforts in maligning Hindu identity. This is something that it has stayed on, and I'm just picking up few incidents across timelines to show that it happens even today. The political assassination of Mahatma Gandhi by Nathuram Godse was reported as Mahatma Gandhi was shot and killed this evening by a Hindu fanatic. This is the Guardian on the 31st of January 1948 at 1339 Greenwich Meridian time. This is what their reporting was. They blamed an entire community and called them fanatic for the murder. But at the same time, SWRD Bandaranaike, the sort of silver bell of Asia, the fourth prime minister of then Ceylon, now Sri Lanka, he was assassinated by a Buddhist monk. But the entire community was never targeted. Martin Luther King Jr. was killed by a wasp, a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, but the Christian community was never targeted. But for 75 years now, in history, the political assassination of Mahatma Gandhi has been blamed on the Hindu community, on a Hindu fanatic. And you won't believe me, it has been internalized so much by Hindus themselves that a right-wing author recently, Hindol Sengupta, also wrote Mahatma Gandhi was killed by a radical Hindu fanatic in his book. That's how much we have internalized it, that we refuse to reject the fact that an entire community cannot be held accountable for a political assassination. That is the limit, that is the extent to which we've accepted this vilification. Impact on society. When you get attacked, there are two kinds of responses you can give. One, you can fight back, one, you can retreat. Unfortunately, recently there's been a lot more retreat than resistance that's been happening. We retreated from Hindu, the word Hindu, because it got vilified too much. We came to Hindustan with a S-T-H-A-N, Hindustan. Then we retreated from that as well to go to Hindustan, like, Pakistan, S-T-A-N, not Stan, but Stan. Then we went to Bhartiya. We thought, okay, we'll get rid of the word Hindu altogether. Let's go to Bhartiya. We are Bhartiya from today onwards. Then we went to India. Then we are letting go of India today as well. We are Indic today. And what next? Are we South Asians next? Are we Asians next? What after that? We are retreating from our identity. And where does this retreat stop? Okay, I think enough theories, examples. He said this, she said this is philosophical, this is theory, this is the logic of how things go. I'll tell you from my personal experience. I'm an engineer. I've got nothing to do with, ideology, philosophy, theology. Mechanical engineer, I think a lot of people here can relate that, we put our heads down and we're really interested in what we are studying. So that was it. I was a student union leader at one point during my Manipal days as well, and this never came into question. It was all about organizing fests, getting the budget, getting sponsorships, fighting with a couple of categories and, making sure it's done. And then I fought an election at the Oxford University Students' Union, and I happened to be their first, Indian female president. It happened. I mean, I was just giving it a shot. I thought, no one's fought before, let me just change that precedent. I shot for the moon, but then I missed and I landed among the stars. I actually won. And then people started coming up with all of these theories. To be very honest, I've never been an overt Hindu. I've never put a bindi, I've never put, I don't have pictures with traditional clothes on my Instagram or Facebook or anything, never. I've never had all of this. I was a very, westernized, I'm a cool kid. I don't associate with these symbols kind of a person, but my family has been very Hindu and all that, so I've participated and I've believed in Hinduism. But, there was no sign. But there was so much research about me, there was so much media attention also that went around. Okay, you might be wondering why a student, election made it to the newspapers. It's because all union leaders then go on to become presidents and prime ministers of their countries. It's kind of a precedent that they set. So it becomes very important to know who's become the president now. So it always makes it up to the newspapers for some reason. So it made it to the newspapers. There was so much curiosity. Who is she? What is she? A history professor on my campus managed to dig up a poster which my mom put up. My mom put up a history professor. Yeah. I choose not to take names. But yes, A professor took up, history professor, actually put up a poster. He actually went to my mom's Facebook profile. I haven't even declared who my mom is on my Facebook, but she's got this tendency, like all other moms, to come to all of your posts and be like, oh, I love you so much, you're doing such a great job, like every other excited mom. I'm an only child, so moms do that and you can't stop them. And you look at 3 of my posts, who's the woman commenting the most, who's the woman putting 5 emojis under every picture, has to be her mom, has the same second name. So he goes to her profile, and my mom, like every other middle-aged woman with social media, does not know how to lock their Facebook profiles, has her Facebook profile open. And then he browses. There's nothing. She's just putting up pictures of her, dad, and me, and, a few things that she's interested about her garden, in fact. And then he had to really, dig, because it was an old picture of hers and my mom's and, traditional clothing. And then she says, Ek hi naam, ek hi nara, Jai Shri Ram. In India, it might be insignificant because we've heard Jai Shri Ram, we use various things to, even greeting, even a religious this thing, bam bam bhole, we do that when we go on yatras. There are specific ways of greeting people as well, which involve a god's name. We say Jai Shri Krishna in Gujarat. I think we had a discussion about this before this. We say all of these things. It's a regular part. You wouldn't think. But then if you go onto a Wikipedia page about Jai Shri Ram, then it's a war cry, it's a cry to violence and God knows what, and all of this was imposed upon my mother. And that a screenshot was taken, an Instagram post was made by the faculty that Oxford is not ready for a Hindu president, that, we are not ready for Rashmi Samant. She comes from coastal Karnataka, which is the hotbed of far-right extremist forces. I was made to look like a terrorist on my campus for just rightfully winning an election and being myself. This was 2021. Not too long ago. 2021 February. So this is what happened. And unfortunately, maybe you don't see this too much because here we are in India. Everybody pretty much has context to everything. So even if someone says, hey, this is a war cry or whatever, you're like, oh no, like, you have the context, you know the history, you know the past, you have people, you have other Hindus around you who will tell you what it is about. But then if you go to a sterile environment where the only source of information is BBC, Guardian, Washington Post, and the Wikipedia, then these misrepresentations, these instances of vilification become an actual problem. It actually translates to something more than misinformation. I also saw this in Leicester. You know what happened in Leicester? There was violence in Leicester. So Leicester is a small place in the United Kingdom where there's a Hindu community as well. So much misinformation about the Hindu community was spread on social media, which was being debunked by the police the next day because they take a while, right, to conduct the actual investigation and then say that, okay, this didn't happen. But within that time span, riots broke out. Hindu homes have been ransacked. A Hindu youth was, hit in the face and, he's got a swollen eye. And many Hindus temporarily had to relocate from Leicester and go on live somewhere. This happened. And this vilification is what led to the attacks on me in the first place. So we might think, okay, we can retreat. We cannot answer these people. If they want to say anything about you, it does not matter. I know who I am, I'm safe. I'm not going to go challenge them. I'm not going to this thing. I'm just going to retreat. Okay, it's okay. If you have a problem with the word Hindu, I'll say Indic, but I know who I am within. But that becomes a problem out there. And you don't know when it'll hit you or who it'll hit at what point in your life. I was at such a high, graduating from the best university in the world, top of my class, head of my division, president of the union now. And this happened to me when I least expected it. And I was so misinformed about it. In fact, I hadn't even heard the word Hindu phobia about it. At that point, I hadn't heard that word at all in my life. That word is so... it's become such a trigger word that you don't hear it at all in the mainstream. So any unsuspecting person wouldn't have heard this word to begin with. So I didn't know what was happening to me to begin with. The first 10 days I was just confused why I'm being attacked. Why, somebody's having so many problems with my identity. I didn't know that there was a whole Wikipedia page which said this about Jai Shri Ram. I didn't know that was the reason why it was gaining so much legitimacy among people who might not have so much context about it. that was where I was. I was misinformed. I didn't know what was going on, and it took me good 15 days to figure out what I was going through. And to be honest, even I considered retreating, because everybody told me, you're being attacked, you're being cyberbullied, people are threatening to show up at your door, people are threatening to, take away your degree. Some people straight up send me anonymous emails saying this will damage you so much that, you'll never get a job in your life, you won't graduate, we'll send a letter to your department, this, that, you have to step down now, as if I've committed some kind of a crime by being me. By being a child born in a Hindu community whose parents are unflinchingly Hindu, who are unapologetically Hindu. They don't apologize for the misconceptions and misinformation out there. And they choose to embrace their identity for being unapologetic. By being unapologetic, I don't mean recklessly optimistic or recklessly brave. I mean not apologizing to the misconception, misinformation, and everything that exists out there. That kind of parents. So I was paying the price of that. Why should I step down? And why am I being threatened in such a way? And why are these threats gaining legitimacy? In fact, the student union told me that, that this has escalated so much that we need to start an inquiry into you because of the reputational damage that these accusations are causing to the union. Can you imagine? Just because somebody is being called a terrorist, because somebody is being vilified so much, for no reason whatsoever, but then it becomes the problem of the victim, and it's the problem of the victim. The victim will be investigated now, because the reinforcement and the visual aid and the visuals of it are more important than what the truth is. That is unfortunately the truth of the kind of propaganda days that we live in. That what appears is more true than what is the actual reality, and all decisions then start getting governed by how it's looking, because that's all that matters, the propaganda with the most amount of weight behind it. So this is something I personally faced, and I did consider retreating because I was being threatened with everything. They said, okay, you will never get a job, your department will disown you, the department will start an inquiry, you won't be given a degree, so you're like, what, you just have an undergrad degree, you came all the way to Oxford and you got kicked out, you won't have a degree, you will, what do you do with your life? You're destroyed. If anybody looks your name up, all these things are going to come up, and they're like, resign now before it gets worse. Resign now before you stop getting visas to countries, before we ensure that you'll never get a visa to a country like the UK. So all these threats are coming my way. What do I do? You would think, okay, this damage is okay. Let me resign now. Let me save my degree. Let me let me do something at least. Let me apologize. Let me just let go of this presidency because it's not greater than my future. I let go of my presidency. I was apologetic, and I was like, okay, let me let go of this presidency. It's becoming too much for me. I'm being threatened on all fronts. There was also a death threat at the back. I thought, okay, this is not something I can deal with in the UK. I thought I'll resign. I'll stick to my degree. I'll put my head down, and I'll retreat. But then the attacks didn't stop. The resignation was mere ruse. Once I resigned, the fact that I resigned was used to justify the fact that the attacks were legitimate in the first place. The fact that I resigned was taken as an admission of guilt rather than as a person who's severely bullied and wants to get out of that situation. So the retreat was actually taken as an admission of guilt, and the attacks only intensified. They found out what my father was doing. Thankfully, he was self-employed. Otherwise, I'm sure he would have gotten kicked out of the job he was doing, if in an MNC. And they tried to, find out where and, where my cousins were, if I had any siblings. There were lots of summons on my follow list. There were lots of societies that I was founding, there was this aviation society that I founded at Oxford, and I was like the founding secretary of it. The Instagram page was completely ransacked, and they got messages like, your sponsorship will be pulled if you don't, leave her out of this. So it was like I resigned from presidency, but they wanted to erase me from everywhere else as well. This is how attacks work. If you start retreating, they'll make sure that, you retreat from the face of earth, that you're completely destroyed. But you don't think this because, you grew up listening to stories of Maharana Pratap, who let the Islamic invaders go when they apologized the first many times. you hear these stories of, letting go of things, of, forgiveness. You come from this kind of a background. You don't expect this to happen. But that's not how, these wars work. That's when I decided to stand up. I was like, I don't care. You know what? You guys have gone too far. You went too far when you went up to my mom's profile, but you're now going too far finding out what my parents do, trying to come after my means of living, trying to find out who my cousins are, who my siblings are. I don't have any, but they tried to make my cousins look like my siblings, trying to write to where they are. And all of this, you're going to come after me full blown. Even if I've resigned, then I'm not going to, stand down. I fought back. I was like, I don't care even if you don't give me a degree. That's the thing. When there's so much noise and misinformation, if one person decides to put their foot down, all of it goes away. And this is something I learned the hard way, and something I've been consistently telling people from experience, because retreat is not the way to go. The moment you retreat, you will be retreated to absolute oblivion. You defend yourself, that's when you regain ground. That's when you even have a chance to win. I initiated an inquiry into the faculty who threatened me, who put up that post against me, and I'm not at the liberty to say what happened to him because of confidentiality agreements, but he does not teach anymore. And there are more things I cannot say. And then there's no way in hell anybody would dare to do anything to a Hindu again on that campus, vilify them for their identity, say them something, something of this sort. And I ended up being their eternal president. Even if you go on campus today and if you ask who the SU president is, they still say it's Rashmi Samant, because I gained so much popularity from that fight back that my names are just etched on the stone right now there. So unfortunately, that is the only, fortunately, that happened to me. And I realized it the hard way that fighting back is the only way. And I didn't know better. We don't know better, because the stories of valor and of winning are kept from us. We are only taught that retreat is the only way. And unfortunately, retreat is what causes Hinduphobia. Hinduphobia is not caused by other people. It's not the Islamists or the Christian missionaries who cause Hinduphobia. It's us. When we retreat, we give space for others to tell that Jai Shri Ram is a war cry. That like Indians never voted for me to begin with, to be honest. Even when I ran for elections, no Indians voted for me. So
I request audience not to interrupt the speaker, please.
So today Hindutva is being equated to Nazi. But Hindutva literally means Hinduness. You're taking away every sense of, Hindu from every adjective and every preposition that we associate with. There was also a conference called Dismantling Global Hindutva, which differentiated Hinduism, Hindutva, and said that there was a problem with one, but one was associated with all others, and everything has to be dissolved hence. This is Hinduphobia, and it's only happening because we let them take shots at us and we do not respond in like, and we do not fight back. That is the problem. That is the source of Hinduphobia. And the impact of Hinduphobia has been great. Hindus are being treated like second-class citizens in the Middle East. They're indentured labor, basically. You know how many Hindus died building those stadiums for the Qatar World Cup? Maybe not, because it did not make it to the mainstream media, but they did, because of the way they're treated and the sort of weight that the Hindu identity carries. Nothing, so it does not matter. There's no space for them in the mainstream. We Hindus are retreating thinking it's safe. But the general identity that we are being assigned out of the retreat is actually causing us more harm. In the UK, the Hindus are actually all gainfully employed, one of the most educated people, one of the richest people, in fact. But they are retreating from the word Hindu. They then get cooped up with South Asians. That then puts up with Bangladeshi immigrants, Pakistani immigrants. The parliamentary records show that 0% of, UK population is 2% of UK population are Hindus, and 0% of them are in prisons. But when it comes to, Pakistani, Bangladeshi sort of crowd there, they are 4% of the UK population, but 16% of them make up the prison population. If you retreat from the one identity that's actually giving you a sense of pride, then you get cooped up with the South Asians, and then you are responsible. You get categorized as the same people, and then, your prison population goes from 0 to 16 as well, because now you're in the broader category. You get, cooped up with the same racial slurs. The moment you retreat from your identity, you then face the repercussions of the broader identity that you will then be associated with as well. Unfortunately, misinformation and propaganda does not stop there. It does not stop with some kind of an intellectual war. It actually turns into violence very quickly. The Holocaust actually started with misinformation campaign against Jews, which quickly snowballed into propaganda and the Holocaust. The Jews were vilified over a period of time, and just like the Hindus are currently. How it happened with the Jews was very simple. Hitler actually had a propaganda officer, like officially. I think we all know about him, right? Goebbels. So he was their literal propaganda officer. Because I believe that in a society we have more good people than not, irrespective of our identity. But when we're constantly fed a lie which pits us against other people, that's when, we look away when there's violence. The vilification of Hindus is similar. There's so much vilification that people will simply look away when there's violence against them. People will simply look away when you tell them that every year 2,000 Hindu girls in Pakistan are forcefully abducted, raped and converted for the sake of conversion. They will simply look the other way when you tell them that in the next 30 years, Bangladesh will have no Hindus. That it fell from 14% to 7% in mere 2 decades. People will simply look the other way. You will not get a mention or a documentary or let alone an obituary column in any of the leading dailies. That is what happens when you simply retreat from this sense of misinformation campaigns. It ultimately affects Hindu human rights. Today there are so many refugees, Hindu refugees from Afghanistan, the former Hindu Kush kingdom, from Bangladesh, formerly part of a former, broader Hindu identity, from Pakistan, part of a former Hindu identity in the past, in Leicester in some sense, in Australia, in Canada, in the United States of America as well. Sometimes you might think that, okay, this is a problem of Eastern democracies which are poor and still developing. That's why human rights violations happen. That's the one reason people give to justify violence. But what about the United States of America where Hindu temples are being attacked? What about Australia where recently in Melbourne, Swaminarayan temple was defaced? What about Leicester, where riots broke out against the Hindus? What about Afghanistan, where one Hindu lives today from the former kingdom of Hindu Kush? What about Bangladesh, where there will be no Hindus anymore? What about Pakistan, where this is happening to Hindu girls day in and day out? There's a serious human rights violation. You become a refugee when you stop identifying with the one identity and take pride and build a sense of camaraderie around it. The moment you retreat, it starts a chain reaction which goes from misinformation to propaganda to finally violence. The path forward is simply regaining the Hindu identity. There's nothing, other than that to combat Hinduphobia worldwide, because today Hindus are global citizens. We are everywhere. It's undeniable. You can't bring them to one geographic region and say that, okay, you just stay here so that you don't get attacked. We are everywhere. You can't stop their progress just because they're being attacked. The only way you stop attacks against them is by regaining the sense of identity, attaching a sense of pride, attaching a sense of importance to it, so that when they get attacked, it becomes mainstream and so much reinforcement happens that it cannot happen again. I set that precedent in Oxford, but it's a very small place. When I got attacked, I just went all out, and now nobody will get attacked in a similar fashion. But then everywhere else, we're not doing that. We're letting them retake, our position, our identity, and the respectability is gone. Today, how many companies are named Hindustan, so and so? None, None. They all come here with their original names and they're doing just fine because there's more sense of credibility attached to a Western name than that of a Hindu name because of our own retreat. So when we start working in society, in the world across, as Hindus, within economy. Jews did it wonderfully. They brought in the kosher concept within the economy. Even today, it's become so important and so fashionable that you find kosher salt as well. The Muslims did it beautifully with halal. Halal is a concept restricted to meat, but they made it so prominent within their economy that today even salt is halal, even apparel is halal. You get, halal clothes as well today. They made it so fashionable, the identity, that, it's become a big part of their economy. They brought it to their education. They brought it to their media. They brought it to their entertainment and allowed nobody to defile a sense of their identity and their religion in these spaces. But we allowed it by retreating. Only when we retake these spaces, gain visibility, gain acceptability, gain respectability for the word Hindu, and when Hindu will start reflecting in our names, when our companies will then read Hindustan Machine Tools, Hindustan Motors, when our names are overtly Hindu, when our symbols are overtly Hindu, when our actions are overtly Hindu, that is when, Hindus will come back in fashion and nobody will dare to do anything to us. There was a period in the 17th, 18th, 19th, and even earlier 20th century when Muslims were being given a hard time by European scholars. The Christian scholars started calling them with derogatory terms. All of their reference, they weren't, it wasn't called Islam. They started calling them as followers of Muhammad, Muhammadiyans. So those words were put up. But then the Islamist scholars, they stood up. They were like, we don't take it, we don't buy it. You can't call us that. You have to, use the word Islam. And then they objected. They created the concept of Islamophobia. They created sensitivity around it. And they accepted it. Every person of their community accepts it. But, our community does not. Even this talk was originally supposed to be titled Hinduphobia, but, we anticipated some problems with that and, we wanted to change that. That's why it came to, identity and, national resurgence, because it is not acceptable today to say Hinduphobia, whilst it's acceptable to say anti-Semitism for Jews, Islamophobia for Muslims, but not to us. And it's our own making. It's not the making of the other communities. And we have to regain this space by overtly saying, no, Hinduphobia, you hear me. Every time somebody says, no, we can't accept it, you stick a foot down and you say, no, this is the word, and if you don't know about it, I can give you literature to show how it has adversely affected the Hindu community so that you can better educate yourselves about this before discriminating our community from taking charge and, from holding others accountable to the human rights violations that we have been successfully facing. On parting thoughts, I'd like to, quote Swami Vivekananda. He said, when a man has begun to be ashamed of his ancestors, the end has come. Here am I, one of the least of the Hindu race. He considers himself to be the least because he thinks, other Hindus have done more for Hinduism, like the great rishis, sannyasis, the scholars. He says, here am I, one of the least of the Hindu race, yet proud of my race, proud of my ancestors. I'm proud to call myself a Hindu. I'm proud that I'm a countryman of yours, you the descendants of sages, the descendants of the most glorious rishis that the world ever saw. He went on to say, intensely love the word Hindu and everyone who bears that name. Mark me, then alone you are a Hindu when the very name sends through you a galvanic shock of strength. Hindu will stand for everything that is glorious, everything that is spiritual. By our action, let us be ready to show that this is the highest word that any language can invent. On that note, I'd like to, read out something that I have written. O Hindu, to every Hindu here, O Hindu, take pride in your identity. Apologize not for the misinformation born of malicious intentions. And regain the magnanimity of the only inclusive and tolerant dharma of this world. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. It was indeed an insightful talk. The information you presented enlightened us on this topic. Now we shall have a brief question and answer session. I request the audience to kindly introduce themselves with their name, department, and program.
Evening, I'm Mahavir Jain from Physics Department. How do you associate the conflict between the Jains and Buddhists from the ancient times to today with the Hinduism, basically? I mean, there was not like you can consider before the Islams, things were all right in all the way.
Yes. Am I audible? Yeah. Unfortunately, it is another one of those, malicious things which are consistently dividing. And you can see this more among Sikhs and Hindus around the world now. With the whole sort of Khalistan movement coming up, the Sikhs and Hindus are more divided than ever. They were more combative. It was not a separate thing, but it was more of a, combative sense to combat the Islamic invaders. They're being not told that. And they're being told other, manufactured lies. The youth are being told other manufactured lies to create this division. How, today, there's this whole division between Tamil and Tamil Nadu. There's a separate sense of identity compared to the rest of India. The same thing is being done with other dharmic religions too. They're being, separated from the sense of, they try to do it during Kantara as well. When Kantara came up, they said, okay, Bhuta Kola, which is being shown in Kantara, it is more of a tribal thing and it is a separate religion. It's not Hinduism. I'm a Hindu. I've got 5 Bhutas in my, family. If I disown them, then they'll come and, then there'll be another Kantara 5 point. So this can't happen. So we all stood up, the coastal Karnataka. That is one thing we do well. We stand up for our rights and, we speak our mind. All of us stood up and said, we all have and we all identify with Hinduism. So I think it is also the conditioning of the community, whether they choose to subscribe to this division or not. And as the Hindu community, I think we can do a lot more to, reach out to people from these dharmic communities and condition them, speak to them, ask their sort of, what their, complaints are and why there's this sort of discomfort that is then making them accept these manufactured things of division. So we did that. I mean, we weren't unhappy with Hinduism. So all of us straight up said, no, we are Hindus because we weren't upset with anything. But if someone is, then they're more likely to fall for these theories and to these, manufactured semblances that somehow Bhuta Kola is a separate religion and, you were all then, colonized by Hindus and God knows what. No. So, yeah, we have a Shiva temple in our family. We also, we follow the Madhvacharya traditions and we also have 5 kolas, 5 bhutas. So that makes it all inclusive of everything.
Hello, I am Kupaswamy, ex-IIT I am. And you mentioned Hinduism only inclusive religion.
Yeah.
But one thing I want to tell, our Hinduism is so ancient and but why it is confined to only India? If you see Africa or other places in Europe, most of the people either Christians or Muslims, majority. Hinduism is confined only day by day, it is losing its identity. What I am trying to say is, it is necessary that we have to, I am a Hindu, I am proud to be a Hindu, but Hinduism must be reformed. Hinduism must be reformed. We have beautiful techniques like meditation, self-analysis, introspection. It is getting obscured by mantras, tantras and rituals and which are non-applicable to common man. So we have to revive and make it, many Gandhis are to be brought out. So only one Gandhi we have produced. That's what I'm trying to say.
Sir, thank you for your opinion, but I think I respectfully disagree with you there. I think in Africa, even in Europe actually, the native Europeans, if you see the native Africans, if you even see the Maori people in, New Zealand who were Maori before the white colonizers came in, all of these regions have seen settler colonization, but before that the indigenous people actually worshipped nature, which we do as well. When we worship, Vayu, Agni, we actually worship nature because it's a way of It is not a blind way of worshipping, Agni or anything. We are just showing gratitude because it sustains us. We do Gau Puja not because, it's not a symbolic gesture, because it sustains us. The manure, it sustains our farms. The milk, it sustains our bodies. And, the ox, they plow our fields. They help us so much in our day-to-day life. It's a way of showing gratitude. And I think all indigenous faiths across the world have had that essence. It's just that Abrahamic faiths have unfortunately defiled and tried to appropriate all our practices over a period of time and then, do it. But if you look at the problems today, let's talk about, we have an environmental problem, there's climate change and everything. If you look at Hinduism, it's about sustainable living, it's very sustenance, and it's about only taking how much you need and not really, but Abrahamic faiths don't follow that. I feel for, the continuity of life as we know it on earth, we need these values back, in fact, and we need to reiterate the originality of our faith rather than fall into the sort of distortions that came in during the colonial period and so on and so forth. We turned to, a lot more ritualistic things only when we were invaded, because we wanted to hold on to some symbolic way of identifying with it, because internally identifying was not enough to assert our identity. So that's how we evolved into all these things. My own temple, so we do this thing called Ekadasha Rudrayaga, Maharudrayaga and Ati Rudrayaga. It is not Vedic in nature. I recently realized when we were looking at scriptures that it is actually not a Vedic thing, but it somehow evolved along the way because we lost almost 90% of our scriptures during invasions, and there was an astute need to reiterate it. So I think we need to rediscover our originality, not kind of become something we are not in the sense of evolution, because it's been one of the most evolved civilizations ever. It gave the world zero, it gave the world Ayurveda, it gave the world even surgery. So if it's given the world so much, then the only problem is that we've forgotten what we did right, and not, that we did something wrong and we need to disconnect ourselves from that. It can be even attached to the pyramids of Giza, right? I mean, they made it then. We've just forgotten how, they've just forgotten how they made it without all the, without all the sort of heavy machinery. They still managed to stack up all the stones, those heavy stones. So I think that's the only disconnect, and that's, we need to look backward but not become something we are not, because then that would Abrahamize us, and that would then lead to other problems, like, that would then just lead to, climate crisis is just a problem that, of Abrahamization, of taking more than you need, of, creating industrial things instead of having a cyclic sort of societal living and sustainable living. But yeah, that's my opinion on this. Yeah.
Has actually done with a stir up the humanity. Actually, all our Vedas will tell us the humanity we have to be develop it instead of the morality. That's what I say. And my question is that you have personally touched up this kind of a situation. So you feel that too much internally. So this is the actually call from the God, or somewhere you can say. So what your future path of going to this one? So you have experienced this one personally. So I am telling that, so it will touch your heart. So you are taking as a path to in your future, how you are taking this one, this kind of a moment you are telling that.
Well, I would definitely see it as a turning point in my life, because, it just came my way out of nowhere. But I think I can do a lot more with this information, in the sense that help society from a perspective where they don't have a voice. I didn't know about the refugee system, what's happening to Pakistani Hindus. I didn't know that as well. But I think, through my foundation and everything, all I'm trying to do is reach out to more people who don't have a voice. Now that I have a voice, share the platform, and maybe, speak at events where we can create more awareness for such people, for such circumstances, and avoid this from becoming, from snowballing into something worse in the future. So that's what I see, do something in my own way to help the cause. But I'm sure there are many well-meaning people, because when I say this, it's interesting, because when I started fighting back, I was alone, I was scared, and I honestly, even when I look back, I don't know how many days I would have held out if not for the community that came to my support. So I think I would have just held out for a week, just being like, this is my truth, I was wronged and so on, and you can't treat me like this. But it's the community that finally came behind me. And I think I am because of all the people that eventually came together for me. So I wouldn't want to disappoint them as well, So I would actually want to do good work that then lends voice to other people who might not have it in such a situation.
Yeah, my name is Krishnamurthy. I'm a postdoc in computer science here. One point you made about us retreating strikes me very deeply because in 2011, when we had gotten Shrikant Talagiri invited to IIT Bombay to give a talk, he gave a talk in the Central Asia Theatre. But after the first talk, there were two more planned. The leftists got together and pushed the talks away from the Central Asia Theatre to the department itself. So that's one example of how we retreat. We should probably have fought more strongly at that point. Second point about the divisive thoughts. The Chinese have as many languages as we do, but they refer to them as dialects of the same language in some sense. And these are their own Prakrits, right? Their own Prakrits, Cantonese or whatever in different parts of China. We should refer to our languages also as dialects of the same underlying Indic language in some sense. We should take control of the use of language. We shouldn't refer to these as different languages. They're different dialects of the same Indian language in some sense. That we should think about.
Yeah, I do agree with you there because I think by the end of the day we have similarity in the grammatical systems that we all follow. The alphabets are the same. The Kannada alphabets basically is the same alphabets as Hindi, but then you write it differently. But it's still A, E, I, U. It does not change. But among the Chinese it actually changes. The alphabets also change. They're different. They're more different than our languages are, but they still look for a sense of unity. Because they realize very easily that this sense of disunity and this sense of sort of division when it comes to diversity is going to be the fall of the nation. So they do realize that, and but we unfortunately fan these divisions more and not able to realize that it's the unity and diversity that's actually going to help us in the long run.
My name is Ishan Kulkarni. I'm a mechanical department student. So I wanted to ask you this, like, as you said, you are a cool kid, you are a proper westernized kid before, and you had to go through the reality through the hard way. So like, there are many students, the majority of youth in India, they don't know about anything, they are not aware of the reality, and they are still living in their westernized mentality. So like, how do you plan to reach to them? Like, you just can't go and tell them like this is this and this is that and you should do this and you should do that. So how do you plan to reach this section of the youth?
Well, I mean, social media I think is a huge thing now, and on social media you reach more than you can. So I think social media has definitely been one way I've been trying. Because you gain access to geographies of people you don't have access to otherwise. And talks like these, and I always turn up in places. So I think that's the thing. But I think each one of us also can have a call for action where we speak to other people, where we challenge views that we think are problematic. And, we don't give up, we don't retreat, essentially. And, we talk to people more than just sticking to, our subjects or something like that. Because you need to decide for yourselves, how do you measure your life, right? Do you measure your life in the terms of the degrees you stack up and the money you earn or the sort of impact you've had on society? When these kinds of misconceptions are actually leading to on-street violence for your people, and it's taking away human rights, and all these distortions are then going to come up massively for other people. You can take some time to talk to people and create something around this, even if you're reaching to one person out there, because then that will add a lot of value to your life in that sense. Because I think Hindus, we see our life as a collection of karmic values that we keep coming back, and we keep collecting that. You're born a certain way because of the karma, and then the karma goes on. So if you believe that, I think that is it. That will show you the way. And I think I'm still cool, maybe not in a westernized way, but in an indie way, so, yeah.
Hi, my name is Jalu Gorin, and I'm from Jharkhand. So, I do not have questions, but I try to understand what happened to you in the Oxford University. The first one is that, was it because of the fear they lost the election? I mean, you became the president. Is because that was framed because of the fear of the loss.
I think they thought they could set an example with me that, no Hindu dares to take that position or look that way, know your place kind of a sense. So I think it was more of make an example out of her so that, they saw a weak sort of a prey and then, they thought, okay, let's make an example out of her. So I think it came more from that kind of a sadistic sense that does reside in a lot of malicious intended elements of our society. And somewhere or the other, these things do come to the surface, and then these things do find camaraderie and, support from others, and then that does become a force within our society. So I think it was somewhere there. And of course, 900 odd years, almost 1,000 years, nobody who looked like me sat in that place. I think, they thought they could make an example and, boot her out and, set an example, set a precedent that even after 1,000 years, if you did manage to put a person in place, we'll boot her out. And I think another thing, a very close an acquaintance of mine from a neighboring country once told me that had it been our girl, we would have all, united around her. But we knew that your people won't unite around you. And that's the reason we came after you.
One last thing.
Yeah.
How do you see the selection of Rishi Sunak? Because he is also somewhere he is a Hindu. So how you see the difference between that and this?
He is a Hindu.
Because he is a prime minister.
He is the prime minister. He is a Hindu. He is an overt one at that, and he is being attacked. So when he lost the election to Liz Truss, some of the most gruesome, memes made about him were actually about his identity, and it wouldn't happen to any other politician. There was once a cartoon of Boris Johnson and Preeti Patel in The Guardian, but Preeti Patel was shown as a cow, but they just made a horrible disfigured thing out of Boris. They didn't use any Christian symbols to make him look bad or criticize him for his policies. Unfortunately, when it comes to Hindus, the criticism just does not stop with our work. Our losses and our wins are unfortunately tied to our identity, and our identity gets dragged along with it because we haven't given it any basis to stand upon. So tomorrow, any mistake he makes, any missteps he makes will be then, put on to the identity, and then the identity will be dragged along with him. I definitely see it as a positive thing that he's come. He came in through an election of MPs, so the MPs kind of elected him in. But you saw what happened when the college was opened up, the electorate college was opened up. They still chose a white woman to take that office rather than a qualified former chancellor. So there's always been that, and there are also doubts about him being re-elected. So I think, yes, identity does play a huge role. And also there is no guarantee of continuity. So you never know when we will see another Hindu prime minister, right? There is no guarantee of continuity. There is no precedent set that the identity will then move on, because we don't have a Hindu caucus in the British Parliament. We don't have a Hindu voting bloc. The Hindus just vote however they want. They don't all get together and decide who they want as their leader and how they're going to hold him accountable to the actions. When Leicester attacks happened, Rishi Sunak did not release a statement, and the Hindu community could not hold him accountable. He still got elected no matter what. So I think by the end of the day, the community needs to organize itself better in the sense that it can have that strength and identity. And it does not come from numbers. The Jewish community is very small in the world, but they control no matter what happens. Even if there's a Republican president or a Democrat who's a president in the United States, the Jews get their way because they have strongly reinforced their identity in the shared trauma of their past in the Holocaust, and they're so proud to be Jewish. I have a Jewish friend, she says she's so proud that her grandmother actually survived Hitler's gas chambers, and that gives her an immense sense of, pride. Why are we not proud that, your ancestors refused to convert during Islamic invasions and colonization and whatnot for hundreds of years? This is not even, Hitler was a decade maybe, but this was hundreds of years. That should give us a greater sense of identity and, rooting, right? We have more basis to root ourselves powerfully with our identity, but we simply choose not to look into it and rather retreat from everything. So yeah.
Hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, thank you for that very illuminating talk. I think you took some of these frameworks from what is generally known as decolonization and you really went to town with it. I think it was great. The question that I had was, since you stressed, my name is Rahul. I am from the Humanities and Social Sciences here. The question I had for you, since you stressed so much upon misrepresentation and the way that, we've been stereotyped in certain ways, right? And that it is important to build Hindu unity. The question that came back to me was, how often Hinduism is spoken of as this caste-ridden religion as well. And most of us know that that's mostly a colonial invention, right? So what do you think is the way forward there, right? Do we, in order for the unity, do you think we should actively break apart this colonial invention of caste and, how do we go forward in that regard?
With respect to caste, there's actually a very interesting book that I'll maybe forward to the team that everybody can read about. It is definitely another, sort of division that's come up in the society. I think the best we can do is actually rediscover the history of the Varna and the Jati that existed and why it existed. And, we have enough reinforcements within our society to let go of the evils that came in due to exaggerated, invasions. Yeah, so I think more education is the way to go, to show what the Jati and Varna system was, how different it was from the caste system, and how much we've done to let go of the caste system that was basically inserted into our society during the colonial period, because it is undeniable that it was made a part of our society to create a sense of, a complex between the different communities, to create rifts and to break them apart. It did happen, but then we need to rediscover Jati, Varna, separate it from this construct, show that it was not something our own, and, basically go forward in a way where our society can heal from this, sort of historical difference that was created. So I think that's the way to go forward. It's basically education and rediscovery of the original past, and not to blame. So basically what happens is, when you don't have that clarity and, sort of understanding, what you do is you try to station caste as an inherent default problem of Hinduism. That needs to stop happening. You need to show that Hinduism did not stand for the caste system, and that even Hindus reject it, and it's a different construct. So I think that kind of a mature understanding and informed opinion needs to come out more from our people and from all sects of our people. There is an excellent Dalit scholar by the name Guru Prakash Paswan, and he makes these references in his talks, and we need to give them more mainstream spaces so that they can reiterate these, learnings. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am, for addressing the queries placed by the members of the audience. I now request Professor Shrikant Vedantam ji to present a token of gratitude and appreciation to our chief guest. Thank you, Professor Shrikant Vedantam ji. I now invite Manish, second year undergraduate student from Chemical Engineering Department, to give the vote of thanks.
I would like to register my sincere thanks and gratitude to our chief guest for coming to our platform and addressing the audience about her experience and views on identity crisis and national resurgence. Also, I would like to thank all the faculty members and the students for joining us here. We hope to see you all at our next event very soon. Those who are interested in volunteering and wanted some further information, please write to us at vandemataram@ismail.itm.ac.in. as we have come toward the end of this program, but this program won't be completed without singing our national anthem. पर उसके पहले मैं कुछ पंक्तियाँ कहना चाहूँगा कि टूटने और बिखरने का चलन मांग लिया, हमने हालात से शीशे का बदन मांग लिया। कि टूटने और बिखरने का चलन मांग लिया, हमने हालात से शीशे का बदन मांग लिया। हम भी खड़े थे तकदीर के दरवाजे पे, लोग दौलत पे गिरे, हमने वतन मांग लिया। Now I would request everyone to stand in your place and sing our national song, a national anthem with us.
Hello. जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्छल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मागे गाहे तव जय गाथा जनगण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे